Hello guys and welcome back to another class of our course about the complete introduction to programming with Java. So in the past few classes we talked about plenty of stuff such as variables, strings, different types of data types. We also talked about different operations that you guys can perform into Java. And basically today what I want to do is talking about the user. So basically you will be the programmer of your app. So basically you are creating the code for someone else to use it. But today we are going to learn a new method that will be, we can say, not user friendly, but basically to let your code interact with the user. So let's say, for example, you want to build up a really simple program that asks the user, for example, hey, enter a number from 1 to 10. The user enters a number. Then you ask the user, enter another number from 1 to 10. So basically he enters another number. And at the end, you simply make the sum of those two numbers and you write down the sum of those two numbers is basically 2. So if it's 1 and 1, for example. So this is a certain really basic applications that you guys will create. We're not going to do this in this class since it's a little bit more advanced. But what I want to do right now is really talking about some method. So basically we're going to talk about the scanner method. And basically simply to learn how to work, but not with the integers, but really with strings. So basically this class is really focused on text and strings. So basically this is my goal, and after that we're gonna talk about numbers as well, and you'll see it's pretty much the same thing. So for now what we're going to do in this class is pretty simple. So we're going to write down some lines of code. And basically when it's all done, you will be able to ask your user to write down something. So pretty simple. All right. So as always, here we have our class, then we have our method. Now another thing that we want to do, we want to import the scanner method. So every time that we import something, it's important to write it down before the class. So basically you want to be able to import it to all your project, not only to a certain class. So basically you want to import it to the whole project. So how exactly we do this? We simply write it down right there. So what exactly we want to import? We want to import the scanner method. So pretty simple. We'll just write it down. So we are going to import, and what exactly we're going to import? So we're going to import java.util.scanner. Here we go. So if you guys don't write down this line of code, you will not be able to use the scanning feature, so basically the scanner feature, and you will not be able to write down the future lines of code. So it's really important to import all the tools. So basically in Python, those are libraries, you import libraries. In Java, it's pretty much the same thing. It's really important to import those tools, so this way you guys will be able to use it in basically in your project. All right, so once you have imported this, what we're going to do is just practice a little bit. So basically to write down a variable, so let's write down a basic variable right here. Well, write down some basic lines of code. So basically to write down a text, in this case, how exactly it will work. So pretty simple, we write down the data type first. So in this case, our data type will be the string. Then we are going to give a name to our variable. So in this case, let's say the variable will be hi. And finally, what we will do, we are going to give we're going to give something to this variable. So let's say this variable says hello. So something pretty simple. Right now that it's done, let's print it. So pretty simple. This is how we create a variable and how we print a variable. So just by writing down system.out.println. So here we go. So basically what exactly we want to print? We want to print hi. So here we go, want to print this variable right there. So if we run everything, what's going to happen? We are going to receive hello as an answer. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. Now let's say we want to ask the user, well, we don't want to ask yet the user to print something. We're just going to create something right there, and the user will write down something such as hello or any other string, and basically the program will simply repeat what the user have done. So pretty simple. This is really the first part to basic interaction with your user. So what exactly we need to do? We need to create a variable that will store the, well, basically the operation that will allow us to create the, the function. This variable will store the function that will allow us to do the following things. So how exactly we write this? So basically, for the purpose of this course, we are going to use the scanner. So in this case, if I'm not mistaken, this is a data type. So we are going to use scanner, and then we are going to create a variable. So this is the first step, writing down the data type, which is scanner. So we can see it as a data type for this course. So basically, what exactly we are going to do now? We are going to give a name to our variable. So let's call it something basic that will refer us to scanner. So let's call it scan. So now that we have all this, what we want to do is basically create the function, or write down the function. So we want to create a new scan, and we're going to refer to the scanner method system. So my computer is lagging a little bit. .in. All right, great. Here we go. Everything is great. All right. So next step, what we want to do is basically use the scan variable and store it inside of a another, in this case, a string. So basically, we're going to store the scan variable inside of a function that will allow us to basically ask our user to do this. So we'll write it down. So basically, what exactly want to ask the user to do? So we want to ask the user to work with the strings. So basically, we want to ask the user to write down a certain text. So we want to ask the user to write down a string. So first thing, we write down our data type, which is string. So here we have our data type. Then what will be the name of our variable? So let's call it text. And finally, we need to write down the function that will allow us to communicate with the user. So we're going to have a reference to the variable scan that contains all this, that contains this line of code that will allow us to communicate with the user. So scan dot next. Here we go. All right, so right now what happens? So let me just re-explain the code. So first of all, this line of code was just for practice. We don't necessarily need it, so we'll just delete it. Great. Right now we have two lines of code basically to make our code work. So here it doesn't make sense as well. So we have two lines of code that make our code work. So first thing, we have our line right there. So let me just run everything to see what exactly it contains, and you understand it. So text. So if I run everything, what's gonna happen is that right here, I will have a blank spot and I can write down something. So let's say I write down pizza. So what's gonna happen? Basically, the program will simply reprint the same thing. So it will reprint pizza. So right now, let me explain the lines of code. So first thing that we did is pretty simple. So I imported java.util.scanner, which is basically the method that we are going to use, the scanner method. Then the next step, well, basically what exactly this method does, it's pretty simple. You can see it in this right there. So I write down a word, a string, and basically it will rewrite down another string. So it's possible to work with numbers and other things, but for now, since it's just the beginning, we are simply working with strings. All right, next step, it's basically writing down this line of code. So this line of code is stored inside of scan. And in this case, we can use scanner as a data type. So basically we write down our scanner, which can be considered as a basically data type. Here we'll have the name of our variable, which will be scan. Then we are going to store this line of code that will allow us to communicate with our user. So basically we are creating a new scanner. And then pretty simple, we want to generate a string. So here we have a string. So to communicate with our user, we want our user to answer us as a string. So here we'll have a string dot, well, not dot, but we have our string, and then we want to create our new variable. So as always, the variable will be text. Then we want to create, we want to make a reference to this variable right there, since it contains this line of code. So it's possible to not use this variable right here. So if I'm not using it, Basically what I will do, I will simply rewrite down all this line of code, and it's not what I need. So I need to store it somewhere. I stored it right here, and I simply rewrote it right there inside of scan. And finally, .next. So basically this allows us to, at the end, be able to communicate with our user. Once again, as you can see, it's really basic, but you need those bases to be able to work with numbers and other elements in the future. So congratulations, right now you know how, well, you know the basics of letting the user communicating with you, even if it's really the basics. So that's it for this class, guys, and see you all in our next class.